What's happening, everyone? We're back again. We've got another episode of Chat and Pony. We're actually in the Fight Academy gym today in San Diego, and we have the main man on with us today, Justin Flores. A lot of you will know him as JFLO. So, Justin, introduce yourself, fella.
Yeah, so my name is Justin Flores. I am from here in San Diego. I started my martial arts journey at a young age in Judo, and kind of was able to utilize that in multiple disciplines of martial arts, wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and worked my way into coaching after I was done competing. And yeah, it's been a great ride so far. I'm still learning. I'm still understanding combat space more and more every day, working with athletes such as yourself. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
Nice. So I always started off with, how did you get into grappling? How old was you when you first started grappling?
I started in Judo when I was about 7 years old. My brother was 8, and him and I would just beat each other up every day. My dad was one of those OG martial artists where he had maybe 10 black belts in all these martial art disciplines I can't even pronounce. Like yeah, exactly, like 70s style, where it was like almost before the reality of like MMA, where it's like, oh, what works and what doesn't. But he worked within like kendo, iaido, karate, jiu-jitsu, Japanese jiu-jitsu, which is a little different, judo, which he got us involved in at a young age. So my brother and I kicked each other's butts every day for, 2 decades. And I was able to kind of be one of the better Americans in that realm as I grew up. And then when I got to high school, me and my brother were both like the best athletes in our weight classes for the 2000 Olympics. So I decided to go into wrestling because I was getting bigger, and it was 1997. And I couldn't make weight for 3 more years at 60 kilos. So my brother was the weight above me at 66 kilos. So I received a wrestling scholarship from multiple universities. So I went to wrestle at the University of Nebraska until after the 2000 Olympics for about 2.5, 3 years. And then after I was finished, after the 2000 Olympics were finished, I came back to Judo full force, moved to upstate New York, and did that for about 6 more years until the 2008 Olympics. So I was able to kind of travel to about 50 countries, competing, representing the U.S. abroad for Team USA, and kind of became who I am through those journeys, travels, highs, lows, weight cuts, and everything in between.
I think that's why it's like quite unheard of for an American now to go from judo to then doing wrestling.
Yeah.
It's normally the other way around.
Definitely.
They wrestle first, and then they get into judo.
Definitely. I think that's what is a little bit different with me, because judo's not that popular here in the U.S. At least it might have used to be a little bit more before the invasion of like BJJ in the early 90s, where I was doing judo since the mid 80s, and I saw that influx of jiu-jitsu becoming a little bit more mainstream as I got better and better within the judo space. And at that time there was a little bit of like a, antagonistic relationship between the 2 disciplines. But to me, it was always one thing. Like even when I was younger, I'd go cross-train in jiu-jitsu and got a lot of good rounds in with people that did different styles. But when I started in judo, I really had no understanding of wrestling until I got to high school. And then in high school, I had a pretty steep learning curve where the first, 20 matches of mine weren't that great. Like I didn't know how to sprawl. I didn't know how to do some of the basic things you have to know to win a match. So after about 10, 15, 20 matches, I was able to mold my judo style into a no-gi space and how to utilize my best attributes within wrestling, which is, totally different, where like if it was freestyle wrestling, it would be much more similar, where if you take someone down or throw them to their back, you get a bunch of points. Yeah. Whereas I would say American folk style wrestling is more like no-gi jiu-jitsu or even MMA grappling, where you have to take them down and control them. You have to pin them to their back, or even control them when they're down. Whereas in freestyle or Greco, you could throw them and flip them and score a bunch of points, where that's not the case. So I had to understand how to control a body after throwing them, which is not easy, because it's a lot of times you roll through and there's a scramble and you might end up on the bottom. So that was my biggest, steepest learning curve, how to stop a shot or redirect a shot into a throw. So it took a while. And then after my freshman year, I started to understand like the mechanics of how to do that. And I was really successful. I was one of the best American wrestlers in high school. I graduated the #3 wrestler in America in my weight class. Kind of took the next step into college wrestling, and I wrestled for a University of Nebraska, which is where Jordan Burroughs wrestled, and just a powerhouse university. So I had a lot of good experiences there at a top tier D1 wrestling school. So that culture of just grind and understand how that works its way into almost an MMA mentality, where you get a lot of American wrestlers that do really well because of the mentality and the skills they've developed there in the D1 room. Whereas in judo, it's sometimes there's like a divide between MMA or no-gi jiu-jitsu and judo, because it's really difficult to utilize those skills in another domain or paradigm, right?
Yeah. It's cold as fuck in Nebraska as well.
Oh God, man, and it's hot as fuck too, man. Those summers are sweltering, dude. It's like trying to train. Oh yeah, it's like just a swamp.
For some reason, I just thought it was always snowy there.
It is. So the first day in October, I think it was, my freshman year, where I looked outside and it's sunny. I go outside, it's 32 degrees. It's 0 degrees Celsius. So it's freezing. I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt. I'm like, nope. I went back inside, stayed in bed all day. So I kind of developed that like seasonal depressive thing where it was very difficult to like shake myself out of in the winter, man. I was not used to it. I'm from sunny California, and I kind of I got pegged early as far as like, oh, the California boys here at practice, so thanks for joining us, because it was kind of a difficult transition for me in the cold. And I got this nice brown skin, and I was able to kind of finally make that transition when I was like a sophomore.
That's exactly what I was going to say. What was it like going from San Diego to that? Like, I hate it when I come to San Diego and go back home to Liverpool in the winter. And obviously, Liverpool's winter is nothing compared to Nebraska's.
Yeah, it's probably way worse.
Yeah.
But Nebraska, like, I'm going to defend Nebraska and give you some pushback. There's no mountains. It's flat as fuck. So if there is a gust of wind 300 miles away, you'll feel it.
Yeah.
And it's cold, man. The wind chill factor, all those things play a part in what it feels like temperature-wise, even though it's, kind of sunny, it's freezing. And your bones ache, and it's just a different mentality where I get like where you become a little bit, rougher and tougher and a little bit more calloused, like moving through your years, growing or living in the Midwest, where, my trips back to San Diego seem to get longer and longer. And then after a while, I'm like, you know what, I'm just not gonna go back to Nebraska. So about 2.5 years into my journey, I just pulled that move, which was like something I do regret. I left in a way that I'm not proud of. I was a 20-year-old, and it was something that was like kind of brewing in me, where my coaches at Nebraska got fired, the ones that recruited me, and they brought in 2 bulb busters. They brought in Terry Brands, who's a really famous wrestler, the Brands brothers from Iowa, and Mark Manning, who's still there. And I went back, and I was just not the same vibes, and I kind of was young and dumb and kind of just wasn't in the same headspace as I was when I wrestled those first 2.5 years. And then in my head, I was like, you know what? I'm missing out on what I'm supposed to do, is win an Olympic medal in judo. And that's my best chance to reach my potential, is in judo. Wrestling, I was really good, and I was ranked in the top 8 in the country, and I had a lot of momentum, but I just had this like negative feeling brewing the more and more I was wrestling. So one day in a snowstorm in the middle of winter, I drove home with only telling our captain, Brian Snyder, who's still there. He's one of the coaches now. And it was just something I kind of want to go back, even with my son, for maybe like a homecoming weekend and just like make amends with that. It's one of those things that I regret, and I wish I could have a do-over, as far as like facing having that conversation, the tough conversation at 20 years old with someone that I didn't really like vibe with.
Yeah.
And it's something that, now as a coach, I see a lot in athletes that I coach, and, to have those clear lines of communication and to kind of face those fears. I was kind of a kid, and I have those regrets a little bit, but, I went right back into judo and had a lot of success right away. So I was, kind of moving from one discipline to another, and I really do think that's what helped me in my martial arts journey as far as coaching, is seeing 2 different paradigms and understand how they work together and what areas to focus on for maybe like MMA or jiu-jitsu, and how to like cross-pollinate two different ideologies, in a gi, not in a gi, and how to make things work maybe a little different.
So did you just leave college there?
Yeah.
Like didn't finish school or nothing?
I went back to a different school, to Menlo College, where I received a wrestling scholarship, and I wrestled about 7 matches. So it was kind of one of those like, yeah, you could come wrestle for us and wrestle a few times, and we'll pay your way through school. And I did, and I got my degree from Menlo Atherton, which is up in the Bay Area by San Francisco. And I finished some years later. It was like maybe 5 years later. I went back to school after I was done competing in judo. So I kind of had 2 different educational endeavors where I was like 19, 20 in college, and then when I was 27, it was very different. You know, I lived in the dorms. So weird, with a bunch of 18-year-olds. I felt like a fish out of water. So strange, being like, well, I feel like I'm a whole different person, and I could actually pay attention in school because I could relate to the content in class. Before, when I was a kid, I was usually cutting weight in class, or I didn't care because my mind was elsewhere. And in this second stanza, you know, I was well-traveled. I felt like education was an important part of my coming career that I needed to like think about now that I was in my late 20s. So I'm kind of thankful for my journey, even though there was failure in it. I didn't reach the heights I felt destined for in wrestling, where I felt like I could have been an NCAA champion, I could have been an Olympic champion, but decided to do these 2 different things rather than put my eggs all in one basket with judo or with wrestling. So some of me, you know, looks back and like, well, I could have done things different, but who would I be today? You know, I wouldn't have what I have today. Not that it's like some glorious thing, but my wife, my kids, all the things that I like have value in now, I kind of think that it was all for a reason.
Well, I was talking to Dan Anderson about this the other day. How many wrestling matches do you reckon you'd have in like a year? Like, you know, when you was in like Nebraska? Because I only have about 2 or 3 fights a year now, and like, when they say like you wrestle like 4 times a day, when like you'd wrestle, that's just like mind blowing to me, because it's wrestling's at 100% as well, 100%. Obviously, I know an MMA fight is and you're getting punched, but wrestling is 100% go from the fucking the bell. Know what I mean? You don't stop.
Yeah, the amount of times I competed in wrestling is much less than judo, but per season. Like, say, a high school wrestling season is about 50 matches, and then you wrestle in the summer, and you have like freestyle and Greco, and then you go into college, and you probably have open tournaments that precede the season where you get about 20 matches, and then in season you get about 30 or 40 matches. So you have about 60 matches just within that like 4 months only, and that's season. So I would go from that season right back to judo. So I would have this never-ending season where injuries and burnout and weight cuts were like par for the course. I just had to like grit through it. So my body got weathered young as far as like my mileage.
Yeah.
It was a rough one, and sure, not like MMA where the 2 or 3 fights you're doing, the camps are super intense, you're taking damage within the camp, then on fight night, you know, just the stress hormones probably you're producing is enough for a wrestling season. So it's a little different, but yeah, just the amount of times you have to get up for a match and understand that like cycle where you gotta prep, you have a match, then you get 3 or 4 days to recover, then you have another match, a dual meet against Iowa, and then a tournament that weekend. So it's a meat grinder, wrestling, as far as like what it's doing to you psychologically and your body to try and like rise above. It's a very special breed of human that's able to kind of like fine. I almost wasn't one of them. It was like, what's the more efficient way? Do I have to go through them? Can I go around them? That's how I always thought. Whereas like the coaches, you're a hammer, they're a nail, go. I'm like, is there a different way? So I try to kind of figure out different ways to make the same results, right? Positive outcomes out of like solutions where it's like, well, instead of hitting my head against a brick wall, can't I like go behind them and trip them or something? So it was like a little easier way, more efficient. But yeah, those amount of matches that a wrestler can have is baffling. And like I had matches where I don't remember them because I got headbutted, or there was one match, Chad Erickson from the University of Minnesota. I wrestled him in the semifinals of the Great Plains tournament, and he headbutted me in the first period, and my front tooth came out. And I don't remember the match. And I won in overtime. And I I don't remember a single moment from the match. And it was one of my best performances. So it was almost like, coach, hit me real hard real quick before every other match. No, but it's just like, it's baffling that I even was like, looking back, it's like, there's gotta be better ways, you know? But I do value all those experiences. It's just such a grind.
Yeah, the mental fortitude to be a wrestler that's like one of the best things I think for wrestlers who come into MMA. Like the mindset that they have
Definitely.
is just on another level.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you could take extreme value out of some areas moving into MMA from being a wrestler, and other areas you almost have to like forget about.
Yeah.
Like the low stance, these things where if you're a righty, you lead with your right foot in wrestling. But as a striker,
You need to do it
you have to switch your stance. So you have a learning curve unless, you know, you become one of those very few people that can switch their stance often and be able to strike off the back foot instead of your front foot in a way that kind of lends itself to being more well-rounded. But if you want to be that prototypical fighter, you do have to learn how to strike orthodox.
Yeah.
And as a wrestler, that's foreign. That's like a foreign thing to lead with your left foot as a righty. So there's like some learning curve. It's hard to just go out day one and be a fighter.
I can remember when Jason first come over and trained with me, and he was like that. He was standing southpaw because he'd never...
Oh, your left hand? He's like, no.
No, yeah, I was like, what? He's like, oh, I wrestle that way. I was like, what?
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
I didn't know at that time until he actually come over and trained me. I was like, how come you're standing like that? I was like, no, that's how we get taught to wrestle. And Paul was like, yeah, that's how they get taught to wrestle. I was like, well, that feels weird. I can't even shoot a takedown from southpaw. Feels weird putting me right knee on the floor.
But almost that's a superpower a little bit.
Yeah.
You know? The way you learned, it doesn't set you up for having to be in your early, mid-20s being like, oh, I have to start from scratch in a way that's foreign, where everything I've learned I have to kind of forget about until we're touching.
Yeah.
Right? It's a different thing where a lot of wrestlers that become fighters are able to kind of get creative though and figure out ways to penetrate and shoot while switching their stances so that their striking could then become part of their grappling in a very, you know, interesting way where everyone's a little different. It's almost a science when I work with wrestlers, how to get them to use their wrestling from space, you know, because they're trying to strike with their orthodox stance, which is something that's foreign in their wrestling life.
So one thing I did want to ask, because I never really done any sort of gi, like jiu-jitsu, nothing. What was it like going from judo, being in a gi all the time, and then going to wrestling, no gi, and then obviously you went back to gi, didn't you? So like what?
Like this like transition.
Yeah, the transitions.
Yeah. I would say originally I didn't know how to like, you know, like Ricky Bobby, where do I put my hands?
Yeah.
I didn't know where to put my hands because it's like lapel sleeve, no? Okay, so I had to learn a series of tie-ups that were easy to get to, like an overhook, an underhook, a 2-on-1, and hand fighting, which is like almost like grip fighting in judo, where you're trying to snap, push, elbow pass, wrist control, arm drag, all these like minor tie-ups from space, rather than just like horns are locked, where it's like gripping a gi.
That's what I was about to say, because obviously you can grip the gi and stuff, can't you? Where once you went from gi to no gi, it's like figuring things out what you need to do instead of grabbing the gi.
And like the style of judo I learned is very formal, like Japanese style, where it's like once you get two hands on, you try and keep two hands on in judo, where it's not like you're gripping and ripping and have ADD. It's like you have two hands on, you could ride out whatever they do and kind of counter or attack. Whereas in wrestling, it's like everything's so seamlessly slippery from tie-up to position to shot to space to back to close, where I really did struggle. It was a difficult transition, and it was hard to implement moves. I don't know how to get a inside trip or an uchimata or a foot sweep from that much space. And when they're on one knee, it's like, what am I supposed to do to you down there? I don't even, how do I function? I have to get down there with you? So I did have to like conform to the paradigm of wrestling. I had to learn how to get in a stance, I had to learn how to penetrate, I had to learn how to sprawl. And once I got those basics kind of ingrained and turn them into reactions rather than like have to think about doing it, I had a lot of success blending the two things, where I didn't have to just try and win matches 17-19, which was the case in my first season of wrestling, where I lost and won matches that were crazy. The scoreboard looked like a Christmas tree is what they said, just like points everywhere, because it was just like, I don't know how to defend things, so I'll just try and throw. So I'm on my back, oh, I'm losing, okay. So it it was this thing where I didn't have like rigid lines between offense and defense and understanding where a match is close, how to keep that lead.
Yeah.
Everything was just like action, and I'd be exhausted every match instead of like being able to kind of ride out things and be smart and tactical. But all that came with more experience, and I actually kind of, became a wrestler at one point, and I think that led to a little bit of my detriment where I wasn't using my superpowers because I was wrestling people that had wrestled since they were 6 in college. And I wasn't doing any of that when I was 6. So I'm trying to beat them at their own game.
Yeah.
Rather than using my superpowers, throwing and tripping and being able to kind of score big points really quickly. So I kind of had to find myself again. And it was tough because a little bit of an identity crisis as you're developing, self-analysis and being aware of what is good for you is important. And rather than like people just telling you what to do, it's like, well, I'm not that person. So, I tried to do my best to conform to the basic tenets of folk style wrestling, but down deep I knew it wasn't for me. It wasn't like my best use of my skills. So I had a little bit of like, angst while I was doing the sport of wrestling because I know that, I'm not one of these people a little bit. I'm like a gi person. So it's like, I love no gi. And I do more no gi than gi now. But as far as like what I felt most comfortable, I felt more comfortable in a gi, where I could like almost cheat my way to throws because like this little thing I'm gripping. So it was like, I had that identity crisis where, nowadays I'm just all of it. I feel like I could function and go into different gears where it's like, oh, we're in a gi? Okay, I know that gear. Or no gi? Okay, I know that gear. So it's a fun like navigation of the spectrum of combat sports and grappling, trying to like figure out what gear to use on people. It's a fun thing. I enjoy it all.
What I was going to ask is obviously where you went from judo to wrestling. When you first started doing wrestling and you were using like judo techniques, was like people giving you funny looks and stuff and frowning upon you and stuff like that?
Yeah, I was lucky to have coaches that in high school specifically, that were like, do that. That's fine, that works. But a lot of other coaches that were like,
Old school, good
way to put it. Were like, none of that works, that is reckless, don't reach back and do those big moves. And almost some of them think of it as like, like you're a cancer to the team because now other people are gonna try it and it's like ruining me being able to teach all these people the basics. So I had to kind of like utilize it at its best time, where throws and all these big moves became almost like my ace in the hole or my change-up pitch, rather than like, this is who I am on the wrestling mat. So it was like figuring out when to use it. And it's hard to just like go up to someone and throw them. It's like you have to wait and almost set traps, let them in a little bit and think they have the upper hand and then
do it in a transition.
Exactly, when they like have your back. Like, I'm not saying give up your back. Like, if it so happens that your back is given up, judo, chop, So it was like figuring out, that was more the journey, is finding out when to use it.
Yeah.
And I think being able to coach athletes specifically how to like use judo, even though I'm not teaching them the full art of judo, because that takes years and like, it's almost like overlearning, especially if it's not for that discipline. Like if I want to teach jiu-jitsu or wrestlers or MMA fighters how to utilize some of those concepts and then teach them a move or two to use within positions that are common on the fence, or after a shot doesn't work, and how to work your way up the body rather than down the body. Those are all things that I think I wouldn't have been able to come to if I didn't do both disciplines.
Yeah.
So as a coach, it helped me kind of realize how to like utilize what people might overlook instead of just do the basic. Like you asked me about the coaches, like, I could just shoot doubles and sprawl all day. But that's like not a special skill. That's like the base level.
Yeah, that's what everyone does.
Yeah, so I think that's what kind of differentiated me from kind of the normal prototypical American wrestler, which is all kind of predated from like the Dan Gable era from Iowa. He coached in the 70s and 80s, the University of Iowa, and he was like on the forefront of like American style of wrestling, where it's like, go through the person, you're a hammer, they're a nail. And that prototypical wrestler usually kind of craps out in their mid-20s because just the body, the wear and tear, whereas you get Russians and other athletes from around the world in those same disciplines of wrestling that could go into their 30s because their body isn't just trash.
Yeah.
Because they understand to let people in or to kind of like understand the tempo of a match rather than always forcing things. Yeah, that's a big differentiation between like the American style wrestling and the Big Ten, where you have like a lot of the coaches at those universities all around the US that were coached by Dan Gable. So he kind of like created that system of American wrestling, which is like very like...
The way you said the age then, what was it, a Cuban that was like 42 at the last Olympics who won a fifth gold medal?
Big motherfucker. Yeah. That dude's scary as fuck.
That was his fifth gold medal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that was in wrestling, wasn't it? Was that in Greco-Roman?
I think so.
Yeah.
I forgot his name, but I know I could picture him. But yeah, and I think, I think you maybe agree with me on this, where as you get to upper weights, I feel like your career longevity could be longer.
Much
I don't know if
longer.
it has to do with gravity or with just muscle density, or I don't know.
Because I think I like smaller weight divisions, speed plays a big part.
Yes, and that diminishes.
It diminishes as you get older, but at heavyweight, it's not as, speed's not as big as a thing, because not everyone's that fast.
Definitely.
Apart from when you get like Tom Aspinall.
Yeah. What a beast, man. Congrats, Tom, on being the undisputed heavyweight champ of the world. That's pretty rad, man.
Deserves it, lad.
Yeah,
should be anyway. Everyone was saying Jones should get... What do you think about Jones retiring anyway?
Well, I know his coach, Brandon Gibson. I actually congratulated him yesterday just based on the fact that, man, it's not every day, or not every day, it's like never, where an athlete decides to go out on top.
Yeah.
It's like you don't see that dark side of their lackluster finish of their career. And I think that's important to note, man. Like, you want to go out on top, I think. And that's so difficult for the legends, everyone that, I can drop 50 names, from like Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar, BJ Penn, all these fighters that like, well, I'll be the old.
Yeah, I think it's Tony Ferguson.
Tony Ferguson, man. I mean, yeah, you know better than anyone as far as like what you did to him. I mean, not that you wouldn't have done that to him before.
Yeah,
it's just like...
It's just the downfall of some fighters where they want to keep fighting. That's where they need to listen to people around them, though, isn't it? A lot of people like, no, I'm a fighter. I'll do what I want to do.
Totally. Yeah, there's like, and that gets close to home as far as athletes that I know that I've worked with that, that want to keep going. And sometimes it's like, man, do I just go along with this? And kind of, it's for them anyways, it's their life. And other times it's like, I don't know if I should be a part of this.
Yeah.
And it's happened a few times. So I can see both sides of that, where it's like, it's up to them, it's their life, but I can see the forest from the trees, perspective, and understanding like maybe their best performances are behind them. And that's hard to like see when it's yourself.
Yeah, when it's you, it's hard to see that. Obviously people looking in can see it differently, but when it's you, I'll always be like that. I'll be like, no, I can do better. I can do better. But I'll have to listen to the people around me and let them tell me.
Totally. And if it's not coming, the motivation isn't like intrinsic. It isn't coming from you. It's not from within you. It's like, I'll prove to those people, or what other motivation from outside external forces. Sometimes it doesn't work the best, especially as you get older. You have to like play mind games just to be motivated.
Yeah.
Instead of like, well, I want this because it's my best self and this is what I love to do, and I'm, okay, yeah. I get that. But if it's external forces and it's things that are like ego driven, sometimes it's like, well, let's get some clarity first. Let's figure out, why, rather than like, well, I can and this is what I know. And it's like, oh, maybe. That's a hard one, it's a hard one. There's nothing harder than that sometimes, and I've coached a lot of athletes in both judo and MMA that, some of those thoughts creep into my mind.
Yeah. Well, anyway, back to you. What was it like getting back in the gi then from obviously wrestling, and then going back to competing in judo? Was it hard to transition back, or was that easier than transitioning to wrestling?
No, that's a really good question, and it's not something I really get asked much, because it's all kind of one thing. But for real, like when I decided to wrestle, I was one of the best under 20 judoka in the world. I'd beaten the junior world champ. Had beaten all these athletes that when I was wrestling, all those athletes that I had beaten became Olympic medalists, world medalists, and were the top tier athletes in the world in judo while I was wrestling. So I missed an important transitional window where when I went back to judo, I was like trying to figure out my legs as far as like,
Did you feel like you needed to catch up to them then?
Definitely.
When you was in front of them before it?
Exactly. The Cuban, Urandis Aransibi, I beat. The Israeli, Ehud Vox. All these athletes that were top tier now, I was trying to like level up to catch, and I had a really hard time doing that. I almost could never do it. And I always kind of regretted the wrestling window while I was in that 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6 window, where I was like, kind of like lost a step maybe, because I was focusing on other things while they were getting hundreds of matches a year in the realm they needed to peak for the Olympics or the World Championships, whereas I was doing a completely different sport. And sure, that got me more rounded for my journey ahead, but in those formative years of where I needed to win matches for that Olympic glory, I found myself missing out by, the smallest margins. And those are little things that I think might not have happened if I did decide to wrestle. So when I got back in the gi, I had much more flat foot stance, a little bit more hunched over, a little bit more my weight on my back foot in a way that I couldn't really find my flow, so to speak. And it took a while, and then I did. And it just took a little longer. And I really do think the wrestling portion of it helped me out against certain styles of athletes, where I'd go against Georgians or Russians or Mongolians that were bent over like me, trying to pick people up and do fireman's carries and double legs and all these wrestling moves, but in a gi. So it set me up for a little bit of like having a better chance against those athletes. But against, the prototypical Japanese athlete who's just upright and has light footing, it had me a step behind. So it's just like trying to plug into place the best style against each opponent, where I felt I was real well-rounded because of, those years of wrestling. But, those matches I missed out were like the key puzzle piece, I think, on like maybe I would have reached my full potential. But, it's all these what ifs and mental masturbation rather than just what happened. But sometimes I would think like, man, I really do regret those 3 years I spent wrestling in Nebraska rather than getting those 300 matches on the tour that I would have gotten to set me up for success when it mattered the most, rather than playing catch up. And it was like maybe a confidence thing, where I was on deck against one of these athletes I had beaten that now beats me, where in my head it's like, well, fuck, they've had the system of their national judo team that's facilitated their growth within these years, and me, I wasn't even doing judo.
Not that you get like a scholarship in wrestling, but you've got a scholarship in judo.
Not here in the States.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Do you get a scholarship in judo?
There's only one university, San Jose State, that actually offered anything even similar to that, which it wasn't really like through the university, it was through like an endowment through a benefactor that helped that program specifically, where they have a great team, San Jose State. And that was something that I went to later, without the school part, just to train as part of their team. But like, no, in the US it is very sponsor-based driven or reaching into your own pocket. But I was successful enough, me and 4 others, or 3 others, the Fabulous 4, we were called for like 5 or 6 years. Me, Ronda Rousey, Ryan Reeser, and Valerie Gauthier. There was 4 of us, where we got full funding from our national governing body of the U.S. Judo to compete and travel and train, and we were sponsored just for our basic needs, nothing like extra, but like our receipts, basically.
No private jets or nothing.
We were sitting in the back of the plane. But yeah, so those like 5 or 6 years of competing, I found sponsorship. I had USA Judo kind of like reimbursing my trips and my training expenses. But there's, we're so spread out and kind of not connected as a US team other than 1 or 2 times a year for camps, that I was kind of on my own, just like a road dog, where I would go train at different dojos around the world or national teams around the world, and then peak for a tournament. I'd go to Japan for 2 months, and then before the Torneo dei Pedi or the Paris Grand Slam, I would go to Japan for a few months, train, get ready, and then go to the tournament by myself, and then meet the rest of the team there. So it was a very individual journey, as far as like, other than the World Championships, the Pan Am Games, these bigger team events where we come together for a week prior to and then go together. It's very just like unattached, where it wasn't like this big formula where we're going to set you up for success because we have a structure and a team. It's like, well, we need like government funding. We need to like judo to become a sport that's more popularized based on the fact that we can create a culture of winning where we always have like one or two athletes that do pretty good, but we don't have like that second, third, fourth tier. Where that's
Is it now, or is it still that way?
Oh, it's still that way.
Still that way?
Yeah, there's still the same people that are running the U.S. Judo, and it's the same kind of problems where it's hard to find enough funding to cover the athletes even. So I think the Olympics coming into 2028 in the U.S.,
Yeah.
we're going to get to send a full team. Because in the Olympics, the host country gets every sport, gets all the full team get to compete. Whereas in most times where like you have to qualify to go to compete at the Olympics for your national team, where
the host nation gets
every weight class gets filled. So at least we'll get a full team, but it's like, how ready is that team going to be?
Yeah.
Are they going to be prepared in the way that it could really showcase on home soil how good we could be, other than your Kayla Harrisons, your Ronda Rouseys, Jimmy Pedros, these few athletes every couple generations that are a blip on the radar? Or is it going to be something where it's like, wow, the investment that came from the IOC with the USOC, like all these governmental or national governing bodies of the sport fund these athletes? I don't know if anything's going to change, where it's going to be, you know, maybe a very disappointing event for us, which I hope not. I really hope not.
You might have to dust your key off.
Yeah, I know. I have a lot of people that are thinking about, because it's just the trials.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be 49, 48, which is like a mummy, to try and do that. I would want to be involved in a different way maybe, but you know, I do have these weird, I'll call them nightmares, but dreams where I'm out there at my age, I somehow am whirlwinded into a position where I'm 4 kilos over the night before an event, and I got to make weight for a tournament that I'm 46 years old in, 45 years old. So it's like this funny thing that happens every so often where I'm like, wow, that was me. That I did all those things, and now I'm living with like the PTSD of it maybe. But yeah, like I would love to still be involved in judo. It's just, it's difficult, you know, with the culture here in America. So I've kind of like been able to utilize what I've learned in judo to work for me in different realms of jiu-jitsu and wrestling and MMA, which I think are really helpful for a lot of people, like break falling and takedowns within areas that might not focus on that much, where you could help well-round a discipline of, you know, jiu-jitsu specifically. Both gi and no-gi jiu-jitsu, I think there could be some room for growth within that sport or combat sport. And I think that's like my journey right now, at least, is to kind of like level up the curriculums of jiu-jitsu academies in a way where they could be full spectrum, where it's like takedowns are a part that's integrated into submissions and strengthy positions.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to your coaching, have you got a favourite memory of competing?
Oh man, I have so many.
That's what I mean. You've got so many, but have you got like a favourite memory, like a medal you've won or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say it starts younger, where all my judo and wrestling stuff that I've accomplished, I was the 1997 high school wrestling state champ in California. And that might, you know, winning a high school thing, I feel like I'm Al Bundy.
No, but California's huge as well, though, isn't it?
It's a big state,
It's not like it's fucking Liverpool.
Well, there's, in California, it sets itself apart from most states where there's only one state champ. Where in a lot of states you have like 4A, 3A, 2A, and 1A, all of them are state champs. Whereas in California, there's 2,000 schools and there's one state champ. So there's a lot of like tournaments that narrow it down to the top 32. And at my high school, we had never had a state champ ever. I'll give some context. So about, I don't know, 8 months before I won state, my best friend, Adam Mejia, who I got involved in wrestling and judo, and we grew up together in the same area in Temecula, he died of cancer. And this was my best friend that I knew everything about. I was riding on the handlebars of his bike going to school every day, and it was just someone that, like, you know, growing up together, you forge those bonds, and it's something I'll always remember, Adam. And he died of cancer and went through all the treatments that you can go through to try and push through, and he didn't. He died about a month before wrestling season started. So I really did dedicate myself to something that was really pure. And that's why I look back at this time as like something so foundational to my growth, because I really did focus all my energy and time and everything I could do to winning this title and like to commemorate his life, because it was a journey he was trying to make as well. So I had a lot of obstacles. I really did hurt my knee really bad. I fractured my growth plate in my knee. I tore my ACL. All these things that were standing in my way of being successful to win that state title and my goal to accomplish it. And I still did. I did everything I could do to make that happen. I sacrificed a lot, and I kind of honored Adam in the best way I knew how. And I did everything right, and I knew he was kind of looking down on me, and it was something that helped propel me. I felt like his help in that journey when I was 7 pounds overweight with an hour to go, stuck in a sauna or whatever, you know, doing those things where it really did change me for life. I named my son subsequently. I named him Adam after him, and it was just something that definitely changed me. So I think that above all, other than like, you know, some titles in judo and other titles in wrestling that I was able to win, that was something I'll always look back on, and I could look back and be just like, I did it. That was something that no one had ever done for my school. So in my head, it was like, oh, fuck, no one's ever done that before. Yeah. So it was like, I was kind of like breaking new ground, and it was something that I felt like I'd help with from my best friend. Yeah, and it meant more to you for that reason. Definitely. Yeah, so I understand why you say that, to be honest, definitely. But how old was you when you stopped competing then and moved more into coaching? My throat fucked here, you know. I get you. I suffer from sinus infections all the time. I was 28. You know, a lot of people I know kept going around that age, and I felt like, what else is there to accomplish? You know, if I'm not going to do it at 28, I'm probably not going to do it. So I kind of had a few tournaments, about a year's worth of tournaments in 2007 and 8, where it just wasn't coming easy. The wins weren't coming easy. And I was really valuing myself with wins and losses just based on the fact that that's the only way you can. Yeah. So after 60 matches, you lose 27 of them. It's kind of a tough road. You know, sure, you're fighting the best in the world or competing the best in the world in that sport, but I really felt like I lost a step. I was cutting too much weight. My knees were science fiction. I've had over 20 knee surgeries, so it was like something I'm like, really? I'm really gonna keep going on this journey when I know the best is behind me? And I had seen other athletes that I'd looked up to kind of with that same decline that kept going, and really just like it set their legacy back maybe, or even like their self-confidence back. So I was like, you know what? It's time for me to step back from this. So I was 28. It was right after the 2008 Olympic trials, and I had met my now wife right around then. And I would say something preceding that, in like the 2005 and 6, where I was like really starting to change the way I looked at my competition and who I am and how I really do value myself in the world. I started to dabble in psilocybin, in mushrooms. And I think that led me to a place where I was questioning, you know, because that person beats me in a sport of judo in the match, does that mean they're better than me? And I started to question that for the first time because, you know, in judo there's like so many rules and it's so far away from fighting. It's a fight in a weird, very like subjective specific way, but if I grip inside the gi, or if I step out of bounds, or if my gi is undone, these weird little things that you could lose a match from. And it was happening. These little things where it's like, does that really mean they're better? Now I'm valuing myself less than that other person. And it started to kind of like take its toll on me, on who I am and how I go through life, and started to kind of become a little depressed. So I, you know, dabbled a little bit in those psychotropic drugs, and at a time where it wasn't that common, 2006.
But now it is, it's
now
common.
It's really
now
common.
It's like normal.
So I'm okay talking about it.
Yeah.
But back then it was like, it's scary, I don't want to get arrested or whatever. But I had a few friends that were also in that same boat, and I had a few instances in judo where I had some very severe head trauma. It's TBI, where I landed directly on my head, getting thrown, not remembering how it happened, or I didn't make the 2004 Olympics because I hit my head really hard in the finals of the Olympic trials. And that is something I'll look back to as like a fork in the road, where it was literally one moment, the last match to go to the Olympics. And I landed on my head really weird, and I herniated 2 discs in my neck, and I kind of came to, and I stepped back to the line, ready to compete, and the referee gave the victory to the other guy because the doctor came out and touched my back while I was out. He touched me in a way that was so minor that he didn't even remember it. And I guess right at that moment, I was disqualified because the doctor can't come out and like manipulate you.
Yeah.
If he didn't touch me and I came to, which probably wouldn't have been the best for my
for your brain
trauma, to engage in full force trying to throw each other on each other's heads. So I really had like a moment of, I have to like get over this moment in life. That was like, my whole value was based on being an Olympian, going into that. My whole life since I was about 9 years old is about like, I'm trying to win the Olympics. And I was in a defining moment and I failed. So I had to figure out who I was without that. And I think I had a lot of help from good relationships as well as like seeing a perspective I hadn't seen yet. And I did that with my experience on psilocybin multiple times where I was still competing, but it kind of like blurred the lines of what winning and losing is in a way where it almost made me less hungry, but more hyper aware and a little more perspective as far as like being an adult about that. It might have helped me in my coaching journey, but as an athlete who like, I wanted blinders, I want to win, this is all that matters to me, it kind of like made that harder.
Yeah.
So sure, it might have like helped me in my well-roundedness of being a human, but to be a combat sports athlete at the highest level, I don't know if it was such a great thing. I mean, as far as like my ego, like puncturing a little hole in that ego and having it be okay, not always being a hyper winner, you know, and I was very similar to someone like maybe Ronda, who just like winning at all costs.
Yeah.
And I get that. That was me. Like, I could even maybe attribute some of her mentality in that realm to me because we were training partners for so long and teammates where it was like, that was the only way. And then, you know, it pierced a hole in that where I saw a different perspective and, you know, it helped me be a little more well-rounded where rather than just like win at all costs, I'm a super winner and that's what I do. So, you know, there's a little, maybe I was maybe jumped the gun on that portion of my life where I could have waited until the 2008 Olympics were done and then kind of like maybe enjoyed that side of psychotropic drugs. But
everything happens for a reason.
Exactly, everything happens for a reason, and it did, like, good things came out of it, for sure, where I was able to kind of like refine who I am rather than being that douchebag who's the training partner that no one wants to train with because I don't let anyone in on anything, you know, like that guy who gets my reps but you don't get your reps. That was kind of a little bit more me. So yeah, it kind of shaped my personality in a way where I think I'm maybe a better, more well-rounded human. I mean, that's up for debate, but yeah, I think everything happens for a reason.
Obviously you touched on it then, Ronda, like what was it like being around there when it all just went kaboom?
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? Like, that must have been crazy.
Yeah.
Because you knew her for years before,
Yeah.
all MMA.
Yeah, so she's my dad's godfather. Or my dad is her godfather.
Yeah.
I was trying to get ahead of what I was getting. My dad's her godfather and I've known her since she was a kid. So my dad kind of took on the role of being her father figure for, you know, almost a decade. So, you know, the scowl that she's like kind of famous for, like looking through her forehead at someone, that was something I remember my dad telling her to like impose fear on her whoever her adversary is, to look through them, through the scowl. And my dad like coached her on that look. It's such a weird thing. And but as a youngster, she had so much fight in her. And she only wanted to go with me and my brother because we were the only two that treated her like a dude.
Yeah.
Because I needed to get my rounds, so I'm not going to treat her any different than anyone else I'm training with. So, you know, I had to go at a level that I needed to get mine too. So there was a lot of like, you know, tears as far as like me doing what I got to do to get what I get out of the round with Ronda every day for a decade. So she grew into, you know, a phenomenal judoka. you know, based on the fact that she had her mother behind her. She had a plethora of coaches around the U.S. that helped her, and my family were there for her whenever she needed it. And on trips around the world where we were on the same teams together, I kind of took it upon myself as far as like being her big brother and making sure she wasn't getting into too much trouble as a youngster, because I was in my mid-20s and she was in her late teens. But she was so good that she was traveling with the seniors. So it is kind of an interesting world out there when she's training and competing with adults as a child almost. So we grew a lot within that space. And then when I stopped competing in judo, I took a few years off, kind of got back to school, finished school, had to like jumpstart my capitalist endeavors because I really had no like special skills other than being able to throw, choke, and armbar people. So it was like, how do I integrate into this capitalist thing where I have to make money? I really had no special skills, so I was like waiting tables for a while, and I was bar backing and doing things that were like, this is what it's about, huh? So I was lucky enough that she made the first call to me where she was like, Justin, I'm gonna do this fighting thing, and I know we had talked about it in the past, but it's real. And I was in a position on the East Coast when she was on the West Coast where it was kind of difficult for me to like be a coach for her. I was way out in Philadelphia, she's in LA. So I'd fly out intermittently, and then my wife got a really good job out here in Carlsbad in 2012. So, you know, right when I moved out here, I was driving up to LA, you know, 2 times a week to help her train, and she was already established. So I would fly to her fights and I would train with her intermittently for short durations coming back to the LA area, but nothing as like roller coaster ride as what I was gonna be able to witness, being almost like a fly on the wall, because none of this was about me. It was like helping enrich her to do the best she can. And if she wanted to bring me along for the ride, a lot of it was just to like pay it forward, as well as to let me see how things have changed for her, which was really cool. Like being her training partner and coach for these huge events that were like preceding fights, that were like media days, and doing the warm-up right before her fight where it was a spectacle. It was no longer just like us two on a side mat where no one's watching because, you know, the tournament's in Sofia, Bulgaria, and who knows about it, you know, it's preceding the internet. So this was like a spotlight, and I really wasn't ready for it. It was just something that I was like, wow, this is like a presidential motorcade we're all running from, because for safety, there's 40 security guards after her open workout at these fights where it was like, this is like something I could have never envisioned. And she wanted me to see that, just based on the fact that wanted to share that with me. Yeah. So it was really cool and illuminating in a way that was like, wow, anything's possible, because these skills that she learned transfer to another space where like people care. And I'm not saying people don't care about judo, but judo is in a very tight paradigm where judo people care about judo, and outside of judo, people don't know what's happening. No one knows. So it doesn't have any mainstream appeal. Whereas, like, you know, you mentioned Ronda Rousey, even to a non-MMA fan, they know who that is. Yeah,
people know who Ronda is.
It really did kind of like broaden my horizons in a way where I was coaching with coaches and nutritionists. We were along, like Mike Dolce, Henner Gracie, these people that was what they did. I was just there to help Ronda. So I'd go on these trips with her to Australia or Brazil where they had a podcast they were doing at noon, and then they had the seminar at 2, and then they had everything that they were doing was enriching their brand. Yeah. Where I was just like Ronda's friend.
Yeah, you were just there.
I was just there to help her out. So I didn't have like a foundational company that I was profiting off of because of this thing I was doing with Ronda. So I was just like, I didn't even have an Instagram account. I was just like, I had no social media presence. I was just like, I remember one day The Rock posted a picture with me and Ronda and walking to weigh-ins, and Ronda's like, Justin, you need an Instagram. So her and this other guy, Lazy, just like, here you go. And it kind of like helped change my perspective on like how I could maybe create something for myself out of this, which, you know, I didn't want to look at it that way. It was almost cringy to me.
No,
like, this is about her. It's not about me. So, you know, it took well into after Ronda was done fighting till I focused on my own like brand, so to speak. And it took a lot of lessons as far as I was roommates with Henry Gracie and Huron Gracie for numerous trips. And, you know, that's all their time was consumed with. So I learned a lot by just being their roommates for 2 or 3 weeks in Rio or Melbourne, Australia, or Vegas, seeing the way they operated within this space where I was just like, oh, training's at noon? Okay. I'll go fuck off at the casino and where they're like literally building curriculums for other gyms to do, or Mike Dolce's making nutritional kind of guidelines for actors in the meantime before things. And I was like, huh, okay, there's a lot more going on here I could learn. So I was able to kind of like step into capitalism for the first time and like figure things out and kind of envision where I could be in 5 years, where, you know, that's what it was about, is like, okay, how can I utilize these skills in a space where I'm like, I could become like a teacher of teachers, or utilize this kind of like opportunity. So yeah, it's kind of a cool thing to kind of witness from Ronda, as well as utilize for my own benefits, I guess, you know, and I didn't want to think about it that way for a long time because it's not what I was there for. You know,
Yeah.
I feel like I did right by her in that fact where, you know, I was really loyal, I did what was best for her, and I tried my best to create a environment when I was training with her that was the safest, that would give her the best of her needs. So I could look back and kind of smile and be like, I did the best I could.
Yeah. Well, obviously a lot of MMA fans will know you just because of that, but a lot of my fans will know you.
Oh, you're the man, dude.
Just because of that. One time in London when Paul was shouting in the corner and went, JFLO him!
Legendary, Paul. Yeah. You're the man, dude. No, I remember I was at my son's baseball game, t-ball game at that moment, and I'm watching streaming on my phone, and my battery was at 1%, and I'm like, fuck, come on, Paddy, you got this. We're in a position, and my phone dies. And I didn't get to see any of the magic. So, I watched the rest of the game anxiously, and I get in the car and I charge my phone. And right when I plug it in and it comes to, all these messages start coming, and then my phone crashes. Because it's just so many like texts and messages that were coming in my way. I don't know, I'm like, that was weird, because I didn't even know what happened. So I go back and I watch a clip, and I was just like, oh, I couldn't help but just be like so proud and just like, man, that was like where everything met in a perfect synergistic way for you, for Paul, for me, just in a way that was like, you know, it's just another notch in your belt winning, but utilizing a skill that I might have been a helpful hand in. It really did kind of give me like, man, it all kind of like means something.
Yeah, it was something that we'd literally worked on like 3 or 4 months before when I was here in San Diego. Like we worked on that quite a bit, especially where it was as well on the wall.
Yeah, on the wall.
Like
Karai Goshi, both sides where someone's leaning in and you're able to utilize what is given for that harai. And man, you landed it perfect. And man, I could envision it perfect in my head. It's just something that, you know, you were able to kind of use in an instinctual way right when it was summoned. That's hard for a lot of people because once it's summoned, you have to force it.
Yeah.
And yours wasn't forced. And that's hard for a lot of people. Not many people can like utilize a new skill on game day right away. And I talk about that a lot when I teach people. And people ask me questions at seminars or online. And I'm like, yeah, these new skills are great. But it's different utilizing it on game day in the wild rather than in a safe setting where, you know, someone's letting you do it.
Yeah.
So you were able to do something that was, man, it's almost magical to see it happen in a short stint. And 3 months doesn't seem that short, but it is with these new movements, especially if you were a kid, I get it. And if it's a lower level, I get it. But you know, you're in the top promotion in the world, fighting an athlete who's not letting you do something, and you're able to make it work in a way that it looked effortless. And you know, I pat myself on the back for that.
Yeah, I'm glad. It felt effortless though. I always think that, like I still use that throw to this day. And whenever I do it, it feels effortless. That's why I love it more than a takedown.
Yeah.
Because when you go like that and throw someone, you're just on top of them, you're like, I'm still got breath.
Totally, it's like a cheat code.
Yeah, when you shoot in on someone, you're like, that's trying to struggle to get them down. It's like, fuck.
Yeah, and you know, that's kind of a big difference between wrestling and judo is like people think of wrestling, it's gotta be hard. It's gotta be, you gotta train it 1,000,000 times to go through them and to make it work with resistance and to do all these things that like, judo tries to bypass, at least from a conceptual way. Judo's still hard, but like you utilize these sequence of movements that kind of goes around the hard part. But the hard part is in learning the reps and making that an instinct. Whereas a blast double is hard because it's hard.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like, you know, and judo kind of gets I don't know, some negative connotations within the space of combat sports a little bit, because it's just like, it's easy. Yeah. Well, wrestling, that's hard. That's what you want to do. Whereas like, well,
getting slammed on your head's not easy.
No, it's not.
Getting through right on your brain is not easy.
Yeah, I can attest to this. I can't turn my head. So, but yeah, no, it's just like a breath of fresh air, seeing it work at a super high level to someone I was able to kind of like help and mentor in that sphere where, you know, it does take a great student to be able to accomplish something like that. So man, it was awesome, bro.
Yeah,
You're the man,
it was sick. Looking back now, that is one of my favourite little moments in my UFC career, because the way he just went over, it was just picture perfect as well. Like, he couldn't have flipped over any better way. He just pumped right on his back, straight into the side.
And it's great because you have such a great base that you could utilize that takedown and be able to, all the skills you've learned in jiu-jitsu and being on top, you could implement. Where instead of like, you threw them and then they got right back up. Where it's like, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's the real hard part. Is because I could teach a lot of people how to throw, but it's like, what happens after? Because you didn't win the match because of the throw. It's not judo.
Yeah.
So it's like, you did the rest of the work. You know,
That's it. That's why I always say with MMA, it's blending everything together. You can take one bit out of one sport and one bit out of another sport. Like, people say, oh no, that doesn't work in MMA. I was like, it might.
It might.
If you put it with something else. Like, it doesn't, you can't just say that won't work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, Taekwondo doesn't work. Hey, that spinning kick just knocks someone out. You know, like, that element of it works really well.
Yeah.
It's just, how do you use that with your style? How do you integrate? And what is the best moves from other disciplines you can integrate? You know, for you, you have a little more range and length, and the rest of it is like, you can envelop them through your jiu-jitsu on top. So it's like all of the pieces putting together, which you're doing fantastically, by the way. I think, you know, I've become a little more detached from like the every UFC that I watch, you know, because I have a family and it's hard to just, like, I was teaching a seminar.
I can't even keep up with them anymore.
It's so difficult.
I mean? Like,
but
every
your
UFC.
fight was probably the last one that I watched, like, the whole card. And I was down at Studio 540 with Jake and everyone, and just the complete dismantling in every aspect of the game was just something that was like a sight to behold, man. It was like,
of an American wrestler.
Man, like, didn't let him in. You took him down. You did the things that like seemed like they were improbable, as far as like owning him in elements of the game that on paper maybe he should have had the upper hand. Where it was like, no, you took him down.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck, amazing. Which is really cool, man. It's really cool to see your growth and development from afar, and you know, having been able to work with you in that development is like something special for me, and how I kind of can retrospectively look at, you know, what I've done.
Yeah.
A little bit. It's cool.
Like, as you say there, it's funny when I've watched the fight back and DC goes like, I've envisioned this fight so many times in my head, and not one time did it go like this.
I know, right? Me and Jake both kind of predicted it the same way it went a little bit, where we're like, you know, I just see Paddy winning in all these areas except for maybe this really little one where it could be the first minute and Mike Chandler gets in really hard because he's explosive, and you negated that right away. It was not even an option. So I could kind of breathe a sigh of relief after the first couple minutes, I think.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's when like he's most explosive, maybe.
Exactly.
You know, so it's like weathering a storm.
That was it. First half of the round, it was keep him on the end of the jab.
Yeah,
Don't let him swing this big overhand left hook, because that's what he was going to try and do.
Yeah. It's really cool to see, man. I'm super proud of you, bro. Like, the sky's the limit. And I'm not just like saying nice things because you're right here. It's like how I really feel. You know, I have a lot of soccer. My son plays soccer, baseball, these local sports. And, you know, I've gotten to know all these parents really well of their kids that play on the same teams as my son. And, you know, they see cauliflower ears, they end up talking, and all of their favorite fighter is you. It's hilarious. I wanted to invite like 6 parents here just to come meet you, because I was like, maybe next time. But it's like a really cool kind of like water cooler talk with us, as far as like, you know, we're at these games. Like, they all love you, man. You're like, have kind of become maybe one of the biggest stars in the sport. So it's like, you know, outside of people who are diehard fans, they know who you are.
Yeah.
And that's something that is really infrequent to become almost bigger than the promotion. So, you know, you have a lot of sway in the world of combat sports, and, you know, the sky's the limit as far as within the sport, but also outside the sport. You know, anything you kind of want to create, you have the ability to, so.
Yeah, we'll see what happens the next few weeks with the belt and that as well. You know what I mean? We don't know. When this goes out, we'll know, but for now, we don't know just yet.
To see how, like, where your name gets brought up, because I think, honestly, you're ready, and it would be the most exciting and beneficial for the promotion itself to have you involved. So, you know, you're probably okay to have one more fight.
Well, I think if Ilya wins, I think it'll be him. But if Charles wins, I might have to have one more. But I don't care. I'll see what happens. I'll fight anyone. I'm not asked. I'm gonna just win the belt in the next year or so anyway.
Hell yeah, dude.
But obviously, thank you for your time. But before we finish, is there anything you wanna, like any online stuff that you wanna get out there, let everyone know?
Yeah, maybe a shameless plug of my...
Do it, lads, not shameless. Get it out there.
My website, jfloacademy.com. It has a myriad of instructionals for all levels, gi and no gi, as well as mixed martial arts series. So you could find a lot of my content there, as well as my YouTube channel, which is JFLO Judo, as well as my Instagram, which is JFLO Judo as well. And I'm going to be coming out with a lot of new products on my shop. T-shirts, rash guards, all sorts of just products with my brand on it. So you could find me there.
Flying. Well, as you all know, it works in fights. So any MMA fighters out there, get ready to JFLO.
Shaka, awesome, bro.
Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Nice one for your time, Justin. And
thank you so much.
We'll see you on the next one. Like, comment, subscribe.